All right. Wasn't that incredible? I mean, I have never seen a documentary like this where I am horrified as much as I am entertained, right? Like what is happening, and at the same time, the joy of seeing this family. I'm so pleased to introduce Law Chen, the filmmaker for Starring Jerry's himself. Welcome.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, mic check, mic check.
Can you guys hear me? There we go. Guys, thank you so much again for watching and sitting here and sort of absorbing this story. There's something going on with the mics here. Hello, mic check. I'll be softer.
So congratulations, Law. So Starring Jerry's himself has been traveling all over the country now, kind of a sensation with the festivals, but was really kind of made a big splash at Slamdance, where you won Grand Jury Prize for Best Doc, but also Jerry won for Best Actor, which is kind of amazing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that experience for you?
Yeah, you know, we we premiered at Slamdance, and Jerry had never seen the film. Should I use this mic? Mic check, this is better. We premiered at Slamdance, and Jerry had never seen the film, and he wanted to only watch it like in a theater where you guys are to really experience the whole thing. Is it me?
No.
It could be me.
Maybe we're being watched.
Yeah, I think I'm wearing a live wire right now to surveil you. You know, he kind of experienced the whole thing like you did, and he never thought he could act. You know, this is a dream that he had when he first came to this country in like 1975, and he gave it all up to like raise a family and pay the bills and become an engineer. And this was kind of his chance to like reclaim a little bit of that American dream. So watching it in the audience like you guys are was kind of like the end of the story for us. So it was a very strange to make this movie that like influenced this ordinary Asian dad's life so much. So much.
What did you eat for breakfast? Okay, well, I don't know about you all, but for me, this film started to feel like a Rorschach test, because I found myself thinking, this has got to be a scam, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's, I really hoped it wasn't. And I think, Law, you really messed with my mind, so, you know, I'm mad about this because it did end up being a scam. But this is kind of a testament to the craft of your filmmaking. You did an incredible job mixing reenactment and documentary. So there's like a, you know, you're playing with a form of fiction and with documentary tropes. So I was wondering, how did you decide when to kind of draw the line between them? I noticed the aspect ratio was changing, and that was, you were having fun with that, and it definitely added to my experience as an audience member. So if you could speak a little bit to that, that'd be great.
I'll kind of give you the genesis of this project as well, but the rule that I kind of came up with in this space was the aspect ratio tells you what the truth is. The wider the camera, the more scripted fictional it is, and the more square the image is, the more true it is. And there's multiple levels of truth that are going on here, because what is this thing? Is it a documentary? Is it a narrative piece? I don't know, because this story came about 1.5 years ago. My producer, Jonathan Shu, who you saw in the film, we've worked together for about 10 years, and he calls me and he's like, hey, something terrible's happened to my father. And I'm like, what could that possibly be? He lost $1 million. And I'm like, how is that? I don't see how that's possible. It's like, I don't either. Can you come help me find out the truth? So we fly down to Florida, and we go and we set up a camera, and we interview Jerry. And we're like, Jerry, what happened? And he weaves us this fantastical tale about, you know, wiretaps and surveillance photos and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there is a movie here that we have to make. But how do you make that movie? Everything's already happened. Do you go recreate everything? If you do, who plays Jerry? There's 2 actors in Hollywood that can play Jerry. Ty Ma's one of them. He's not going to pick up my call tomorrow to be like, well, let's do this thing.
He will now.
Now he will. But at the time, it was like, the only option here is, Jerry, do you want to play yourself? And he said, yes, only if it's a spy film. I'm like, okay. Because he felt like James Bond, he felt like Jason Bourne, and he wanted the audience to feel the same way. So we're like, okay, let's do this. So we went and started making this documentary that became a spy film, but ultimately it's sort of about this immigrant's search for the American dream.
That's incredible. I love that Jerry wanted to be the star of his own spy film. I felt like what really struck me was, so this is a very sadly ordinary experience of elderly people getting scammed, but you make it so extraordinary through the filmmaking, and you also make us fall in love with his family at the same time. And in some ways, you kind of matched the audacity of these scammers with the audaciousness of your filmmaking by daring to cast Jerry as the lead. That's a really big risk, to put a whole feature film on the shoulders of someone who's never acted, but is actually reenacting their own very traumatic incident in their life. So I was wondering, what was it like to coach him as an actor? Because you're kind of playing a fine balance. You don't want him to overact. You don't want him to actually pretend like he's James Bourne. And you also want to maintain his legibility as a character, as a documentary subject.
There are a lot of rules in documentary filmmaking, like ethical and moral boundaries that you do and do not cross, and we broke all of those rules in making this thing, and we were kind of like, who cares? I don't know what this thing is, and that was the question I asked myself every day as we're shooting. I'm like, what are we making here? It's like some glorified home video for this family. But throughout the process, Jerry just wanted to make a spy movie, guys. That's all he wanted to do. So we wanted to give that to him. And I was telling you this earlier, it's like, if we were like, Jerry, we're gonna make a documentary about you and examine every aspect of this terrible thing that happened to you. He's an ordinary Asian dad. Can you imagine going to your Asian dad and being like, hey, we're gonna unearth your deepest, darkest secrets in this sort of expository documentary? He wanted to make a spy film, and that's what we did. And along the way, we kind of just observed him in his being and see what he did, when nobody was watching. And that kind of became this sort of documentary aspect of it. But I don't know, I'm behind the camera being like, is he acting? Or is he being himself right now? I'm not sure. So every day after we would wrap, I go to John and I'm like, what just happened today? Because everything we do is changing how he's living his life. He was doing DoorDash. He was trying to make ends meet. And part of the reason we did this project is John's I don't want my dad out there risking his life making, dozens of dollars a day. So let's do something with him. Is that breaking the rules in documentary? Yeah. You don't influence a subject to do something else. You don't direct them to do something else. But that's what we felt like we had to do to tell the story that he wanted to tell so badly, but also, just to give him a good ride, and that's what he got.
So I have to ask, at what point, were you ever worried, what if he's a horrible actor, And, brothers and ex-wife are part of the package too. So at what point did you realize this is gonna work?
The brothers are, right. But during my initial interview with Jerry, I felt like I saw something special. He had this sort of he could really escape the fact that there's a camera there and there's a camera there filming me and just really be in his own world and just really capture the essence of ordinary Asian dad that I don't think our normal or ordinary Asian dads could do, because there's this self-consciousness about him. And if he was here, he's in Taiwan, he's doing well, everybody. But he's come to a couple of these festivals and they ask him these questions, and he was kind of you know what? It happened, and after 5 days, I just forgot about it, because there's nothing you can do. There's literally nothing you can do. And that attitude that he took seemed lackadaisical, but that got him through the whole thing, and that's kind of what he brought to this, where he was kind of I'm just gonna be me, and I'm just gonna give you all of that, and not even care about what happened. So he was very easy. Kathy is just Kathy. I get a lot of people being great, weird casting, why did you choose her? I'm that's their mother. She's incredible, but that's who she is. I didn't do she directed me the entire time. And then the sons are the sons. They just came, and some of them are not actors, and they just wanted to help their dad. And I just did everything I could to get some performance out of them. But this was really just a home video of sorts, like they used to do. So.
I love this idea that it's a home video. So really what you had to work with were a bunch of phone calls and text messages at the most. And from that you had to build a world for us to look at on film. So spatially what I love about this film, it's so playful. It becomes like the reality and then what's in Jerry's head are starting to nest within each other in the film, like Matryoshka dolls almost. And then you start to mess with it. Like when the Shanghai police come into his apartment, or they're meeting him in the grocery aisles with that weird Asian back massager thing that I never know how to use. Somebody can show me one day. But the epitome of this, I think, is in the bank scene, where he's making his final last withdrawal. And suddenly it goes from he's speaking to the teller, who I love, by the way, he's amazing. He's speaking to the teller, it's real world time. And then there's, I think it's a one take, it's like a 360, and suddenly the cops swarm in and it's Jerry's head. I mean, whatever's going on in his mind, he's saving the world. And then the camera makes a full sweep back and it's back to normal teller guy that I love. How did you decide when you would start to blur these lines between reality and what's going on in Jerry's head?
Michel Gondry, Spike Jonze, some of my favorite directors. I just love kind of like giving you that surreal experience, because that's how Jerry viewed the whole thing, you know? That bank teller, like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Like, who is he? And we did so many different takes with him where I was like, you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. And we just cut them all together, because in his mind, Jerry was this hero. He was the designated survivor. He was the guy that was coming to, like, you know, solve this crime, and he was important. And he thought that these policemen were friends of his. He thought that the bank teller was this sort of villain. And how do you show that? Through just text messages and phone calls. So that's the liberties I started to take, where it's like, let's go into this very surreal world that's visual and weird of what Jerry imagines, that this person is next to him telling him what to do and becoming his friend, and that this bank teller is this, you know, criminal mastermind. Because ultimately, the real story is more tragic and more boring. He sent out $1 million via phone calls and a couple bank transfers. And the most fictional part of this whole thing is how many questions the bank tellers asked. Because they didn't ask many. They just let him send it out. And when they went back to Chase Bank to be like, yo, he sent out like 8 transfers totaling $1 million, Chase Bank was like, well, he did it himself. There's nothing we can do. So it was kind of playing with what's real and you know, giving you guys hopefully a fun ride out of what is just an ordinary, everyday story that happens to the elderly.
All right, we're going to be opening up for questions soon. I'm sure you're dying to ask them. I did want to ask you about the ending. I felt like there were actually multiple endings. They were all very satisfying. There was the kind of inevitable culmination where it all comes crashing down. It really is a tragedy. And then kind of the coda where now he's working his DoorDash. And then at some point, it's like a pleasant surprise that you find, I think you find as a filmmaker, you find the happy ending. And for me, I saw 2 ways that you did this. One was that you gave Jerry a chance to fulfill this lifelong dream of being an actor, a performer, a creative. And how many other elderly people are we surrounded by that actually still have these dreams? And you got to do that for him. The second was actually the goodbye for Taiwan. I felt like this is every immigrant's deepest shame. You know, they come here with a so-called American dream in their heart, and they go back home after 40 years with absolutely nothing. But the way it was shot, it was kind of like riding off into the sunset, and he was so kind of okay with everything that happened. So I was curious for you, how much of this, what for me was a surprise happy ending, was kind of part of the plan at the outset?
In fiction, you have an ending written. And then in the truest way that this is a documentary is that we didn't have an ending going in. We were hoping that we'd find something that he would get his money back. They would find the scammers who transferred the money to crypto. Jokes on them. So we were hoping to find something, and we just didn't. It's just gone. So what do you do? Like, how do you examine the broken pieces of this guy's life? And for the longest time in the edit, we were like, we don't have an ending. And we just sat with it and thought about what we were doing and like, what are we making here? We're making something that's like changing this guy's life. And we realized that the process of making this was this ending. So we kind of cobbled together this finale, which is us all realizing that this was this, making the movie with his family was this cathartic experience for Jerry and for his family. And Jonathan, the son, tells this story all the time where Jerry turns to him one day after we were done, and he's like, I may have nothing, but my ability to give you my story means I'm still doing my job as a father. And I was like, oh my God, that's heavy-ass shit. So yeah, it was really a discovery on the way of influencing how their lives are going to turn out. And that breaks every rule in documentary filmmaking, so there we go.
We love rule breakers at SDAFF, so thank you so much. I wanted to open the floor up for questions. Right over here in the middle.
Is the doctor a real doctor?
Did you see the certificate on this wall? That was a super fun scene to write. It was going to be just a normal scene based on reality because he was diagnosed with CAA. And at some point we were like, what? Are you a real doctor? Because you're not doing a great job here. So no, he is an actor. But I wanted to plant the seeds of like, what are this meta weird thing that we're watching here? But yeah, I love that question.
How was the writing process with Jerry?
Oh yeah, so that's part of the story here. Rewind back to us finding out about the story. We're interviewing him. We hear this insane story. And we're like, hey, can you write down your conversations with the police or the scammers? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And he basically produces for us a screenplay in like formatted. And we're like, how did you know how to do this? And that's when we all found out that this was his dream years ago. And that's kind of began our journey of like, Jerry is a co-writer of this thing. And every conversation, every word that comes out of the scammers' mouths are true. When they're like, hey, don't worry, we'll give you $50,000 or $100,000 to help you out, that's real. It's too weird to make up. So yeah, it was a lot of collaboration with the subject himself, writing this thing.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one is, do you know if we're coming back to dance the living function?
I don't think he's going to come back here to live, but he has come back to go to film festivals, which has been an incredible experience for him. But he's like, listen, Taiwan's cheap, and that's what I need right now. So he's out there and he's doing that. And then, the question always comes up, and I ask this too. It's like, why can't the sons support him? Why don't they just have him live with them? But Jerry was like, absolutely not. He still holds this sort of like traditionalist, patriarchal role as like, what kind of father am I if I'm not the provider? So I will not allow that. I'd rather go leave the country and be by myself, supporting myself, than have to rely on my sons because I am a giver.
I wanted to ask you, because I read recently that Jerry was not at fault necessarily for believing in this kind of outlandish idea that he was being surveilled by Chinese police, because I think there was news reports recently that there had been centers set up where Chinese government people were surveilling. So how much of this did you and Jerry talk about as he's writing the script? Some of these details that the scammers use about like taking photographs every day of your meal were actually things that they did too, right?
The photos were, like, they made him do that every day. Actually, the truth of it is, the real process is way more terrifying and way more boring than what we put together. He had to call every 2 hours to check in, and he had to take photos of every single meal, and like note where he was at all times, and he complied with all this. And the immediate reaction is like, how could this be possible that Chinese police are blah blah blah? And then that news article came out yesterday that there are stations in New York City that do that. My background is I was born in the U.S., but I grew up in China for middle school and high school. It's all very real. So when I was kind of hearing the story, I'm like, there is a truth to this that I'd love to put on camera, even though the police at the end of the day are not real, but some of these tactics are. So, what was your second part of the question?
I was wondering if you would, or if there was some GoFundMe. Oh, great idea.
That's a very interesting question. We've brought that up with him, and he was kind of like, absolutely not. I don't take charity. And that builds into the whole persona of who this guy is. He's just this like lone wolf. I'd rather go out there and make money than take it from you. So, yeah. Thanks for asking though.
Have you partnered with any like aging advocacy groups to promote like the message of the film or elder scan prevention?
Yeah, great question. I think that what we want at the end of the day is like a call to action. Like what can you do? What can you go? How can you support? And AARP is somebody that we are talking to. They do have a link. It's like, if you've been scammed, come here. We have therapy for you, for the elderly to get through all of this. And Jerry didn't have that support, but we hope with this film that we can give that. But also, how to prevent it. So that's something we're looking at for sure. When this sort of ends its festival run and hopefully goes out into the world, that's definitely something we're going to be looking at.
So I think I speak for everyone. Oh,
Do you want to go? Okay. Well, what prevention tips do you have then for the elderly?
Great question. Ultimately, it's like, if you could say in like one line what I want all of you guys to do coming away from this film, is go call your parents. Like, literally finish this thing, walk out, and like call your parents and be like, not just like, hey, how's it going? It's like, what exactly have you been doing lately? I made this because Jerry reminds me of my dad. I think that my dad couldn't finish watching this movie when he watched it, because he was like, I left my phone in this room and I'm afraid that somebody's gonna go take it and blah, blah, blah. I think you really need to like have conversations with your parents. And for anyone here who is a parent, have conversations with your kid, and just, don't withhold this information. Jerry was the perfect spy in that he kept it secret from his family when a single phone call could have just alerted somebody. But he was living alone, and he was unfortunately divorced, and his kids are off somewhere. So just that extra bit of connection really goes a long way. When they're sending out money transfers, it's like, what is that for? Just curious. Who's that going to? So call your parents, really see if you can connect a little bit further than you are already with them.
well, unfortunately, we have to end the Q&A. We do have a special invitation by Negihama Bar and Grill upstairs. They've opened up the space for us so we can continue debriefing and chatting and checking our T-Mobile phones. Thank you so much, Law, for being here tonight and sharing your film with us. Enjoy the rest of the Spring Showcase, everyone.
And vote for Jerry.
This film is eligible for the Audience Award. Hint, hint, hint.